You won't believe what just happened in the world of sister wives. A moment that was meant to be private, sentimental, and sacred has turned into one of the most shocking revelations fans have ever seen. Cody Brown, a man long known for his control and complicated relationships, took a single action that left everyone stunned. He melted Mary's wedding ring, a symbol of love, commitment, and years of shared history, turning it into something unrecognizable. For those who have followed this family for years, it was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of betrayal, dominance, and emotional power plays. Hi, I'm Sarah from Channel. Welcome back. If you love following the shocking twists of sister wives, hit that subscribe button and comment below with your thoughts on this latest bombshell. Cody and Mary's story goes back decades. They were once the couple that fans rooted for, navigating the challenges of a polygamous marriage while trying to maintain love, respect, and a sense of stability. Meri, known for her warmth and thoughtfulness, often appeared the most sensitive among the wives, quietly enduring the complexities of life in the Brown household. Cody, on the other hand, often displayed a mix of charm and control, someone who could captivate but also intimidate with his decisions. The ring, given so many years ago, represented not just a union, but a memory, a history, and a promise, an emblem of emotional attachment that Meri held on to tightly, even amid the ups and downs of their marriage. And yet, when Cody melted that ring, the action was a deliberate statement. It was a moment loaded with emotional weight, speaking volumes without a single word. It suggested not only the end of a chapter, but also an attempt to erase the past, to assert dominance, and to remind Meri of the control he wielded. Fans watching this unfold were not prepared for the intensity of it, and the internet erupted almost immediately. Social media exploded with shock, anger, and disbelief as people tried to process what such a symbolic act truly meant. This wasn't just a personal decision between two people. It was a public statement, a dramatic illustration of how power and emotion intersect in ways that leave lasting impact. For Meri, the moment was jarring. The ring had been hers, a tangible piece of her history, and suddenly it was gone. What remained was a mix of melted gold and unspoken feelings, a transformed object carrying a weight far heavier than metal could ever hold. And for the audience, it was a revelation that stirred both sympathy and outrage. Everyone watching felt the emotional shock, the subtle cruelty, and the lingering questions about why Cody would go to such lengths. This wasn't just about a ring. It was about trust, respect, and the emotional currents that have flowed through the Brown family for years. As we explore this story, you'll see how this one act reveals not only the complicated dynamics of Cody and Mary's relationship, but also the patterns that have shaped the lives of everyone around them. The ring may have melted, but the emotional ripple is far from over. Cody Brown has always been a figure of fascination and controversy for Sister Wives fans. For years, viewers have watched him navigate the complex web of multiple marriages, balancing authority, affection, and the expectations of four very different women. But underneath the public charm and occasional tenderness, there's a recurring pattern, a tendency toward control, emotional detachment, and symbolic gestures that speak louder than words. The melted ring is just the latest, and perhaps the most striking example of this behavior. Throughout his marriages, Cody has often shown a remarkable ability to separate emotionally from the consequences of his decisions. He can charm, negotiate, and even apologize, but there is a lingering undertone of calculation in his actions. Moments that should have been expressions of love or connection often carry a subtext of dominance. He manages relationships with a sense of hierarchy, sometimes emphasizing fairness, but often demonstrating his own need for control. The wives, including Meri, have repeatedly found themselves navigating this delicate balance, trying to honor their own feelings while accommodating Cody's decisions. Meri, in particular, has felt this deeply. She has always been the heart of the Brown household, sensitive to the emotional temperature of the family, yet repeatedly confronted by actions that left her questioning her place and value. One of the most memorable examples, aside from the melted ring, was when Cody made decisions that visibly disregarded her emotional investment. Whether it was prioritizing the opinions of other wives, making unilateral financial choices, or controlling access to family milestones. Each of these moments chipped away at the trust she had built over years. When Cody chose to melt her wedding ring, it wasn't just a symbolic act. It was a profound statement of erasure, a reminder that even tangible memories could be stripped away at his discretion. The emotional impact on Meri was immediate, a mix of disbelief, hurt, and a lingering sense of betrayal. Fans have long been attuned to these patterns. Social media forums, Reddit threads, and fan pages lit up with discussions dissecting Cody's behavior. Many viewers pointed out that the melted ring was more than a personal act. It was emblematic of a recurring tendency to assert dominance through symbolic gestures. Comments poured in analyzing past episodes, noting how Cody had often imposed his authority under the guise of fairness, yet consistently left one wife feeling sidelined or emotionally diminished. The audience recognized a familiar script: charm, subtle coercion, and public appearances that masked private discord. Each gesture, whether small or dramatic, became a window into the psychological dynamics of the family. It's impossible to understand the melted ring without considering Cody's broader pattern of control. For years, he has used objects, words, and actions as markers of authority, deciding who gets what, who has influence, and whose voice is prioritized. These gestures are not random. They are deliberate signals designed to maintain a particular structure within the household and, perhaps, to reinforce his own sense of identity. In the case of Mary's ring, the act of melting it removed not just a piece of jewelry, but a symbol of her connection to him, reshaping the narrative of their shared history. For Meri, the personal cost was heavy. She had invested emotionally in the marriage, placing trust in Cody that was repeatedly tested. Seeing something as intimate and sacred as her wedding ring transformed into a reminder of control rather than love forced her to confront her own boundaries, resilience, and self-worth. It was a moment that crystallized years of emotional tension, highlighting both the fragility of trust and the consequences of repeated disregard. And yet, as painful as it was, Mary's response also revealed growth. She didn't react with anger or public spectacle. Instead, she reflected, processed, and started reclaiming her sense of agency, a quiet but powerful response to years of emotional imbalance. Fans were captivated not just by the drama of the ring, but by the psychological depth it exposed. Posts flooded in, analyzing how Cody's actions mirrored classic patterns of emotional detachment and dominance. Some praised Mary's composure and resilience, seeing her as a counterpoint to a man whose decisions often sought to control the narrative of his family. Others expressed frustration or anger at Cody, highlighting the intensity of public engagement with these personal dynamics. In every discussion, one thing became clear. Cody's pattern of control was no longer just a private matter. It had become a story shared with millions, a cautionary example of how power, ego, and emotional neglect can leave lasting marks on those closest to you. The melted ring, then, is more than just a dramatic event. It is a symbol of Cody's approach to relationships, his need for control, and the emotional cost of that behavior. It is a reminder that even seemingly small actions can carry enormous weight, reshaping trust, love, and perception. And for those watching, it's a lesson in the complex interplay of power, emotion, and accountability, an unfolding drama that continues to capture the fascination of fans around the world. The moment Cody melted Mary's wedding ring wasn't just shocking, it was heavy with symbolism, layered with meaning that went far beyond the surface. To most people, a ring is a simple token, a piece of jewelry representing love, commitment, and shared history. But in the context of the Browns, it became a statement, a calculated move that reflected dominance and a desire to erase the past. When Cody chose to melt that ring, he wasn't just altering metal, He was attempting to rewrite their shared story, to assert control over a symbol of Mary's connection to him, and, in doing so, to make a public display of authority over the emotional landscape of their relationship. For Meri, the impact was profound. That ring had carried decades of memory, moments of hope, intimacy, and compromise. Seeing it transformed into something unrecognizable forced her to confront a painful reality, that something she had treasured, something deeply personal, could be discarded so casually. The act left an emotional scar, a reminder that trust and love can be manipulated, reshaped, or even taken away by someone else's ego. Yet, even in the face of such deliberate erasure, Mary's response revealed a depth of resilience that many fans found inspiring. She didn't lash out publicly. She didn't create a spectacle, and she didn't allow herself to be consumed entirely by hurt. Instead, she absorbed the blow, processed her feelings privately, and began to reclaim a sense of dignity that had been quietly eroding over the years. This moment highlighted a stark contrast between Cody and Meri. While Cody's actions were ego-driven, rooted in control, and designed to assert dominance, Mary's response was about self-preservation, reflection, and emotional intelligence. Where he sought to demonstrate power and erase history, she chose to preserve her own sense of self. It was a study in two approaches to life under extraordinary circumstances, one seeking to control others, the other seeking to understand and reclaim personal strength. This contrast resonated deeply with viewers who had spent years watching similar patterns unfold in the Brown household. Fans saw in Meri a figure who, despite repeated emotional challenges, was learning to set boundaries and prioritize her own well-being. The symbolism of the melted ring was not lost on the audience. Social media immediately erupted with discussions, theories, and reactions. Some viewers expressed shock and outrage at the cruelty of the gesture, interpreting it as a vivid illustration of Cody's need to dominate emotionally. Others focused on the poetic justice inherent in the situation. The object meant to symbolize love became a tool of manipulation, revealing the disparity between Cody's intentions and Mary's expectations. Across Reddit threads, fan forums, and comment sections, the conversation quickly evolved into a deeper reflection on power, control, and the emotional consequences of living in a highly publicized, multi-spousal relationship. The melted ring became more than a plot point. It became a symbol of both betrayal and empowerment. For Meri, the incident became a turning point. It forced her to confront not only the loss of a tangible reminder of her marriage, but also the cumulative weight of years of compromise and emotional imbalance. In interviews and confessional moments, she spoke with a quiet strength about coming to terms with what had happened, processing the pain, and starting to reclaim agency in her life. This journey of internal growth, often subtle and understated, highlighted a profound transformation, moving from a place of hurt and dependency toward a position of self-respect and emotional independence. She began to redefine her own story, separate from Cody's control, finding dignity in reflection and resilience. The broader impact of this event was amplified by the public's fascination with Cody's patterns. Fans connected the melted ring to a series of past behaviors, seeing it as the culmination of repeated emotional gestures that often prioritized Cody's ego over genuine connection. By melting the ring, he created a physical representation of a recurring dynamic: control masked as fairness, authority disguised as concern, and a disregard for the emotional needs of those closest to him. Yet, viewers also saw the counter-narrative: Meri's ability to withstand the blow, reflect, and grow. That juxtaposition became a compelling story of contrast. Cody as the ego-driven, controlling figure, and Meri as the quietly resilient woman reclaiming her dignity. The moment quickly went viral because it was raw, emotional, and symbolic in ways that were easy to understand, yet deeply complex. People related to the pain of having something meaningful stripped away, while simultaneously admiring the courage it takes to rise above emotional manipulation. Commentators highlighted how the act exposed the vulnerabilities inherent in relationships dominated by ego and control, and how resilience and self-awareness could redefine the narrative for those affected. The melted ring became a talking point, not because it was just a piece of jewelry, but because it embodied decades of emotional tension, struggle, and eventual personal growth. By the end of it, the ring itself may have changed form, but Meri had begun to change as well, not in anger or revenge, but in strength, clarity, and emotional independence. The story of the melted ring is more than a dramatic headline. It's a portrait of contrast, showing how one person's need for control can clash with another's journey toward empowerment. For the audience, it is a powerful lesson. Even in the midst of betrayal and symbolic erasure, resilience and self-respect can shine through. And that is why, for viewers around the world, the melted ring didn't just signify an ending. It became a symbol of personal reclamation, of quiet strength, and of the enduring human capacity to rise above emotional manipulation. Cody's actions never exist in a vacuum, and the ripple effects of the melted ring were felt throughout the Brown family. Christine, Janelle, and Robin each carry their own histories with Cody, shaped by years of navigating his control, his decisions, and the emotional weight of life in a polygamous household. For Christine, the news was both shocking and familiar. She has often seen Cody prioritize authority over empathy, and the melted ring reinforced patterns she has witnessed for years. In her confessional moments, She expressed concern not just for Meri, but for the entire dynamic of the family, highlighting how one act of emotional control can create waves that unsettle everyone. Janelle, known for her outspoken nature, wasn't shy in sharing her perspective either. She recognized the gesture for what it was, an assertion of power disguised as a meaningful act. For her, it was a reminder of the repeated challenges of balancing love, fairness, and respect under Cody's leadership. Janelle's reaction underscored the emotional labor that the wives consistently invest. An effort to navigate both public scrutiny and private turmoil while managing relationships that are far from simple. The melted ring wasn't just about Meri, it was about the ongoing struggle to find equality, voice, and stability in a household with shifting allegiances and unspoken tensions. Robin, who has her own complicated history with Cody, faced the situation with a mixture of caution and self-preservation. Observing Meri's pain and the public reaction, Robin seemed to process the event in terms of her own position, how past patterns might repeat, and how her emotional responses would factor into Cody's perception of loyalty and control. Her reflections highlighted the fragile balance within the family, the constant negotiation between asserting personal boundaries and managing the expectations of the patriarch. The event reminded viewers that no one in the Brown family operates independently. Every action and reaction has a ripple effect. Fans and social media were quick to amplify these perspectives. Posts flooded platforms like Reddit, Twitter, and fan forums, dissecting the wives' reactions, analyzing body language, and debating Cody's intentions. Many viewers expressed empathy for Meri, while also highlighting how the other wives had navigated similar experiences of subtle manipulation and emotional stress. Discussions quickly turned to comparisons, reflections, and speculation about how these patterns would influence future interactions. The audience became a part of the narrative itself, weighing in on family dynamics, the morality of Cody's actions, and the resilience of the women involved. The family dynamics surrounding the melted ring illustrate how interconnected emotions, history, and personality are within the Brown household. Cody's decisions don't just affect one person, they shift relationships, test alliances, and challenge the emotional resilience of everyone involved. For viewers, understanding the wives' perspectives adds layers of depth to the story. It shows that beyond dramatic headlines and viral moments, real emotions are at play, shaping relationships in ways that are both complex and deeply human. In the end, the reactions of Christine, Janelle, and Robin highlight a shared truth. Living under the influence of someone like Cody requires constant negotiation of feelings, expectations, and self-preservation. The melted ring may have been a singular act, but its emotional echo is felt by all, reminding fans why they are so invested in the Brown stories, and why moments like this spark conversations that extend far beyond the screen. For years, fans of Sister Wives have watched Cody Brown navigate his marriages with a mix of charm, control, and calculated ego. But sometimes, life delivers a reckoning that goes beyond emotional symbolism, one that plays out in the public eye in a way that can't be ignored. Cody's participation in Special Forces' World's Toughest Test offered exactly that, a literal and metaphorical moment of payback. In a high-stakes, physically demanding environment, he faced challenges that tested his strength, endurance, and composure. And then it happened. He was defeated by Olympic gold medalist Shawn Johnson in a viral moment that had fans everywhere cheering. Watching Cody, a man who has often exerted dominance in private, being taken down by someone with precision, skill, and calm confidence resonated on a level that went far beyond sports or entertainment. It wasn't just a physical defeat. It symbolized years of emotional and psychological patterns finally catching up to him. For fans who had followed his behavior toward Meri, Robin, Christine, and Janelle, seeing him literally brought down was a form of poetic justice. The man who once used subtle manipulation and symbolic gestures to assert control over his wives had been humbled in a very public, undeniable way. The symbolism here is striking. Cody's patterns of dominance, his need to control situations, people, and emotions had been evident for years, from financial decisions to emotional distancing, to gestures like melting Mary's ring. Now, in a physical arena, that dominance was challenged, not by force alone, but by strategy, intelligence, and precision. Shawn Johnson's takedown was seamless, calculated, and elegant, a stark contrast to Cody's ego-driven attempts to maintain control. For viewers, it was more than a fight. It was a reflection of past dynamics, a moment where the narrative of power, authority, and control collided with reality, humility, and accountability. Social media erupted immediately. Clips of Cody hitting the ground circulated across Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter, accompanied by thousands of comments praising Shawn's skill while also drawing connections to years of Cody's behavior. Fans framed the moment as karmic, noting the satisfaction of seeing a man who often controlled others finally experience being controlled, even if only momentarily. Memes, discussion threads, and debates flourished, with people connecting this single event to decades of relational patterns in the Brown household. For many, it was a moment of vindication, a symbol of accountability delivered in a way that words or social commentary never could. Cody's public defeat also amplified conversations about power and vulnerability. Just as his actions toward his wives often had emotional consequences, this real-world moment reminded viewers that control is never absolute. Authority, when unbalanced or ego-driven, can collapse quickly. The contrast between Cody's private dominance and his very public humbling emphasized a universal truth. No matter how much someone tries to manipulate, control, or assert power over others, circumstances eventually demand accountability. Fans recognized this, celebrating not only the spectacle of the takedown, but the message it carried about integrity, respect, and the natural consequences of one's actions. What makes this moment particularly compelling is the intersection of past and present. Cody's symbolic gestures in his marriages, particularly the act of melting Meri's ring, had already established a narrative of dominance and emotional detachment. Now, years later, that narrative met a tangible consequence. Being physically brought down by Sean Johnson mirrored the emotional downfall he had resisted facing in his relationships. It was a visual, powerful reminder that the patterns of control that affect others can also impact oneself when challenged, whether emotionally, socially, or physically. Fans couldn't get enough. Many commented on the poetic nature of the moment, noting that it felt like a culmination of years of tension, frustration, and observation. Some pointed out the irony. A man who often orchestrated events to maintain power and influence was humbled by skill, timing, and precision. A reminder that control is fragile when it relies solely on ego. Others praised Meri and the other wives in their reflections, noting the satisfaction of seeing patterns of dominance challenged indirectly through this public spectacle. Ultimately, this moment tied back to the larger theme of accountability and the collapse of control. Cody's attempt to assert dominance, whether emotionally or symbolically, collided with reality in a very public way. Fans witnessed a reversal of fortune that was satisfying not because of cruelty, but because it was a natural consequence of long-standing patterns of behavior. It was a moment that reaffirmed the lessons of his marriages. Power and control are temporary if wielded without empathy, respect, or awareness of the impact on others. Cody's defeat became a story not just about him, but about the broader consequences of ego-driven actions and the enduring importance of resilience, fairness, and accountability in all relationships. This is approximately 700 words highlighting Cody's public reckoning, the symbolism of the takedown, audience reactions, and the thematic tie to accountability and collapse of control. Through all the drama, heartbreak, and public scrutiny, Meri's journey stands out as a story of quiet strength and growth. From the moment she watched Cody melt her wedding ring, she faced a mixture of hurt, disbelief, and emotional exhaustion. That single act represented years of complicated feelings, unspoken tensions, and a sense of being controlled and undervalued. Yet, instead of letting it define her, Meri began a process of reflection and self-discovery. She started to examine what she truly wanted, what boundaries mattered, and how to reclaim her sense of self beyond the influence of someone else's ego. Meri's evolution is a powerful reminder that dignity and resilience are built in the quiet moments of processing pain. She chose not to react with anger or resentment for public display. Instead, she allowed herself to feel, to reflect, and to redefine her narrative. The melted ring, once a symbol of loss and control, became a turning point, a catalyst for her to reclaim her voice, her power, and her self-respect. Viewers watching this transformation witnessed someone taking ownership of her emotional journey, proving that strength doesn't always need to be loud, but it can be profound. For the audience, Meri's story offers more than entertainment. It invites reflection on the dynamics of control, emotional manipulation, and personal growth. It shows how someone can emerge from hurt, not broken, but wiser and more empowered. Her journey reminds us that no matter how deeply someone tries to undermine your sense of worth, there is always a path to reclaiming your dignity. In a world full of public drama, Meri's evolution is quietly inspiring, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of moving forward with clarity and courage. As we reach the end of this story, one truth stands clear. The ring may have melted, but Meri did not. Through heartbreak, betrayal, and public scrutiny, she emerged stronger, wiser, and more in control of her own narrative. Cody's gestures, driven by ego and a desire for dominance, could take a piece of metal, a symbol, but they could never take her dignity, her voice, or her ability to reflect and move forward. This moment offers more than reality TV drama. It's a lesson about power, control, and the lasting consequences of ego-driven decisions in relationships. When authority is wielded without empathy, when emotional manipulation replaces understanding, it eventually faces a reckoning. And when someone like Meri chooses reflection, resilience, and self-respect, it becomes a quiet but powerful reminder that personal strength always outlasts symbolic gestures meant to diminish it. Hi, I'm Sarah from Channel Name. Welcome back. If you've been captivated by this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on Meri's journey and join the conversation. Let's talk about what this teaches us about relationships, respect, and reclaiming power in our own lives. Remember, the drama may be shocking, but the lessons behind it are even more unforgettable.